Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Matt Schnell to defeat Cody Durden. And I'll get to that fight soon enough. I'm here to recap UFC Fight Night 242, Burns versus Brady. In the main event, Sean Brady beat Gilbert Burns. A very solid performance from him over the course of 5 rounds. Took away the jiu-jitsu and largely the striking of Gilbert Burns. He faced enough adversity here to call it a great performance, but still it was dominant. 50-45 to the point where I would call it a lackluster performance for Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is much closer to 40 than 30 as Sean Brady is, and Sean Brady looked like the athlete in his prime here. He's still looking very solid as a fighter, as a contender. This was a good 5 round effort. I feel like he needed that, but he's already shined in 3 round efforts at a solid level in the UFC. Taking out Kelvin Gastelum, Jake Matthews. And the one loss, of course, is to the current champion, which, Brady climbs a few more rungs on the ladder. Rungs, right? I don't know. But if he climbs a little more, 1 or 2 fights, he's got a storyline with the champion, if that is still the champion. But for Gilbert Burns, this could have been a pivotal fight downward. I think it was. I don't know if he's a viable main eventer here at this point. This was a rough loss for him, kind of similar to the Bilal Muhammad loss in general, a clean decision loss over the course of 5 rounds where he didn't really make too much happen for himself. And I think here, yeah, he's still going. He didn't lay his gloves down like Matt Schnell did, but this could have been a pivotal loss for him. And he's no longer in that upper echelon. But still, he's an excellent fighter. His skills are incredible, and he didn't get knocked out. Certainly didn't get submitted here. So he's healthy for a 38-year-old or whatever. So we'll see. But Sean Brady, yeah, he called out Ian Gary. That fight would be amazing. And any other fight would be amazing. He's going to be fighting top guys now. And this was one of them. Natalia Silva had a similar type of performance, a 3 round victory over Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade, she's still only 32, so I can't say this is a pivotal loss downward. And Natalia Silva, I think, is going to be fighting for a title in her career, if not winning it. So it's not a bad loss. I did think she lost cleanly, but she made it pretty competitive. I thought it was close enough. Not close enough to go her way, but, close enough to be a good fight. But Natalia Silva, her outside striking, she's just too fast. And she was able to play the matador very, very effectively. And Andrade was semi-effective as a bull. But, yeah, a clean loss there. Not the worst loss for Andrade again. She's still going. But for Natalia Silva, this is the best win for her. And she looked incredible again. She may not be the best finisher as she's fighting the best fighters, but she's an awesome fighter, and she's looking very solid in these 3 round fights. I want to see her fight 5 rounds in the UFC, but that could be next. Who knows? But either way, she shined here in the co-main event, which was a great spot for her. Her first few fights in the UFC, I feel like the first 4 of them, she was the second fight of the night. And she had everybody's attention after that first fight, the win over Jazdavicius. But here she got a win with the spotlight on her. And yeah, she could have a main event next. I thought this fight could have been a main event. Steve Garcia pounded Kyle Nelson. This was a great win for Steve Garcia, who I forget what happened. I know he was on the bottom briefly, but he turned things around, had an opportunity to get violent, and he got violent, and that's his thing. He's now 5-0 with 5 consecutive knockouts in the UFC. It's phenomenal. And Kyle Nelson is a very tough guy. I went over his TKO losses to Carlos Diego Ferreira and Billy Quarantillo before the fight, but he's definitely tough. And here he got finished inside of a round with really one opportunity, one onslaught. And Steve Garcia shows, again, he is one of the most dangerous guys in the whole UFC in any weight class. So for him, I don't know what he's got going next, but he's got a ton of momentum where a main event would not surprise me, and it definitely would not disappoint me for Steve Garcia. He's already gotten some high profile spots on cards, but you can't deny 5 consecutive knockouts. And he was replacing Calvin Kattar, who is still one of the best fighters in the world. And for Kyle Nelson, yeah, this was a rough loss, but he still had a lot of momentum going into this fight where he's not going anywhere. Speaking of which, Matt Schnell did retire after this loss to Cody Durden, which it was phenomenal from Cody Durden, an excellent performance. But Matt Schnell, he's vulnerable in a lot of ways, as he reminded us last night. He's always been submittable, a lot of guillotines, and here was a ninja choke. But he has always been susceptible to getting knocked out. And that's really the crux of the matter here. I wish him well in retirement. He's a guy who could have kept fighting. And if he kept fighting, as long as he was allowed in the UFC, he'd be beating UFC competition because his skills are that great. But his chin is just that weak. And it's not his fault. Certainly wasn't Jens Pulver's fault. It's just, it sucks, but it's a reality, and concussions are a coming if you're going to stick around fighting. So I'm glad he retires here without another concussion, although he still got nearly strangled by Cody Durden. But yeah, Matt Schnell, he seems like a smart guy, probably would make an excellent coach. He's got shit going on. I'm happy to see him step away uh, on his own volition. That's right, I know that word. Okay, Cody Durden, though, he stepped up on 4 days' notice, and he won't. The first round was close. He could have lost. As somebody who bet on Matt Schnell, I was very pleased with the first round because I knew it was close enough, and certainly I knew he was probably in better shape being on a full camp. But Cody Durden, he is a wrestler and a grinder, and even stepping off the couch, he's probably in better shape than a lot of fighters in peak condition. And he was in good enough shape here to snatch a ninja choke on Matt Schnell and got it done in round 2 really impressively for Cody Durden because the fight was close again. I can't say it wasn't going his way, but it was definitely a tough first round. And most guys taking a fight on 4 days' notice would fade. And he looked like an animal pouncing on that choke, rolling through with it and holding it tight. And he forced a stoppage in the second round. So it was an excellent win for him. He did get a bonus for it. And yeah, I was betting on Matt Schnell, and I like Matt Schnell, but I like Cody Durden too. He's a real serious grinder and an excellent fighter. And this was a great moment for him. Yanal Ashmoz beat Trevor Peek. This was another example of Trevor Peek really just being too limited. He was able to force his way into the UFC with all of his excellent traits as a fighter, but his skills just don't hold up. And Yanal Ashmoz was the much cleaner fighter, I think, striking wise and certainly grappling wise. He had some beautiful, timely takedowns in every round, and I thought had a pretty clean victory over Trevor Peek, although Trevor Peek was still bringing it, even in the end in round 3, taking it to Yanal Ashmoz. His traits were there for him, but I think they stopped being such a big factor after he knocked out Eric Gonzalez, maybe. Ashmoz, it's not like he's the most established fighter. He's got fewer fights than Trevor Peek, and he's certainly not the most established UFC fighter. But it seems like he's here to stay, and anybody who's here to stay probably has too much going on technically for Trevor Peek. So I don't know if he's going to be kept around or not, but if it was me, I would try to make room for him because he is just one of those fighters, that brings guaranteed excitement with the right matchup, even the wrong matchup. But yeah, he's definitely a fun fighter, but the losses pile up and might be a time for him to lose, to get cut. But a great win for Yanal Ashmoz. He looked really solid over 15 minutes. Chris Padilla beat Zhu Rong, Rong Zhu. This was a second round doctor stoppage with a beautiful elbow. I mean, that thing was beautiful. And they got the close up and the swelling and everything in slow mo. It was amazing. But this was a very competitive fight. I thought Zhu Rong was ahead of round, but I also thought Chris Padilla wasn't going anywhere. He looked good into round two, and the fight was open. But Chris Padilla put an end to that with a cut. I'm never the biggest guy, the biggest cut guy, especially when I pick the guy to win, the guy who lost. But still, Chris Padilla, he looked tough. A lot of people would have given up when the going got tough early, and he didn't. He battled his way back, and elbows cut, and that's what happened. Oh, he didn't cut. What the fuck am I talking about? A cut. He smashed his eyes shut. There might have been a cut there as well, but he smashed his eyes shut. I was talking about doctor stoppages like they're all just cuts. But he forced a doctor stoppage with a beautiful elbow. It landed right on the eyeball, pretty much, and that was it. The thing swelled to a tennis ball within a minute. So it was fucking awesome for Chris Padilla. Yeah, he still showed a lot of great traits in the victory, but I think he definitely was in the realm of winning a decision. But if these guys fight again, or if anybody fights again, it's probably not going to end with a doctor stoppage. So there's that. And for Zhu Rong, yeah, I don't consider this such a major strike against him. You'll hear me talk about the next time I break down one of his fights. That he lost this one's a TKO, but it's not a strike against his durability, unless his eye keeps getting swollen. Isaac Dulgarian went through Brendan Merotte. This was another dominant victory for Isaac Dulgarian, but good for him to get the finish down the stretch because Brendan Merotte was such a big underdog that this fight should have lasted a minute theoretically, and Isaac Dulgarian, the majority of his fights do last like a minute, maybe 2 minutes. That's the mean, median, and mode. But Isaac Dulgarian is a fucking really good fighter. He showed a lot of great traits against Christian Rodriguez in a losing effort. I know he collapsed in round 3 and the rest of it, but he didn't get it finished when a lot of other fighters would have. He took a 10-8 round when he was fucking exhausted. And here against Brendan Merotte, the 10-8 rounds were in his favor, and he still got it done late, which was impressive in one way or another. But yeah, I don't want to harp on a guy who was like the biggest favorite in UFC history getting a finish just because it was late. But it wasn't the worst outcome for him. It didn't answer every question, but it definitely was a good look. And for Brendan Merotte, look, he did well, in my opinion, considering the odds. But yeah, this was a really tough fight. And against Terrence McKinney, that one wasn't too pretty. I feel like he's got more to offer, but he may not get a chance to offer it. I don't know. Andrade Lima beat Felipe dos Santos. I thought this was a clean victory and a good battle. Felipe dos Santos bringing more wild shit. But in general, I thought the grappling ended up going to Andrade Lima. Like I speculated on before the fight, I thought he had more grappling than meets the eye. I went back to his amateur fight with Marcos Degli, and he showed signs of something there. And here he looked like fucking whoever. Aljamain Sterling when he needed to. All right. Maybe I'm overstepping a little bit there, but he's definitely a fucking well-rounded fighter, and his grappling was the difference. I thought he was winning the striking battle, but I also thought the judges could have had that first round the other way. I think Felipe dos Santos will kind of win the optics battle with more flashy shit, and he just shut all of that down with some neutralizing grappling. Wasn't the most exciting victory, probably for a guy like that especially, but it was awesome and a good new wrinkle to him as a fighter. And for Felipe dos Santos, he showed a lot of great traits. I mean, I would have been tapping in round 3. He was strangled. I was certain it was over, and he was not, and he kept fighting. So it was a good look for him, but obviously he can be controlled. Gabriel Santos beat Yija or Jayi. I don't know which way to go with those. Whatever. But what were they calling him? Yija? I don't know. Anyway, Yija looked awesome in a losing effort because I thought he should have been finished early with every one of those front kicks. But he was so badly hurt, and Gabriel Santos teed off on him for like a minute, and he survived. And then he kept battling his way back into it and forcing Gabriel to try to slow it down. And it was an awesome fight. Really good, fun fight. I thought Santos definitely won. There was no doubt about it. But it was good. It was a good, hard-earned victory. And Yija showed he can take an ass kicking and keep going. His last loss as well was a grind. And here it was another grind, but he was the one being ground or grinded. Jacqueline Amorim beat Vanessa Demopoulos. I don't know. I rewatched it. Like she kind of put her Vanessa kind of forced the hand into her glove, but it was there. But I don't know. I thought it was a good victory for Jacqueline Amorim because it won me fucking $7. So I liked it. But I thought it was a solid performance from her. Take away the finish, and it was grappling dominance for Jacqueline Amorim. I thought it looked like a lot of her other victories. And now on paper, it looks that way. I don't think it'll be overturned. I do think her hand was in the glove, but it wasn't like she was, trying to grab her or whatever. She was just going for the armbar, and shit was happening. She was focused on switching her legs over and isolating the arm, whatever. But regardless, it was a dominant victory for Jacqueline Amorim, and I do think if she didn't finish that armbar, it still would have been a dominant victory for Amorim. Although Vanessa Demopoulos has shown a lot of great traits, and she's never been finished as a pro. And of course, we all saw Jacqueline Amorim's one loss to Sam Hughes. So this one could have been open as well. But she looked great early and got the finish early, whether you agree with it or not. Andre Petroski beat Dylan Budka, who made it to the fight. I can't believe after that weigh-in, but he made it to the fight, and he didn't look too good there, but he didn't collapse and get knocked out. I thought early on his chin looked good, but then it stopped being about chins, and it was about Andre Petroski being a big bully in there. And that's the Andre Petroski we've seen lately. That's who he probably was first as a fighter. I know his striking has developed, but that's the Andre Petroski we should see, although maybe with a few more, finishing touches. But he looked dominant in there, made the fight a grappling match, a wrestling match, really. And he was the better wrestler and grappler and third round fighter in the rest of it. So solid workman-like performance, but not the best overall fight. And for Dylan Budka, this was, I think, a bad matchup for him. Him fighting a bigger bully version of himself. So rough loss for him. I don't know if he's getting another opportunity or whatever, but yeah, this was a bad matchup. And the first fight, Nathan Fletcher beat Gigamontes Ramaska. Fletcher looked really good here. I thought it was a fun first round. Ramaska reversed him after a few minutes of control, but Fletcher kept at it and hit a beautiful, aggressive double leg. I think it was a double leg in round two, and just totally took over the fight. Stepped over into mount, had him controlled, and then forced the arm triangle stoppage pretty quickly. He's a good submission threat. A lot of them come early, but I think most of them come in round one. I don't know, whatever I said before the fight. But this was a good round two finish over one of the best guys he's fought in Ramaska here. So great win for Nathan Fletcher to begin his UFC career. He's definitely moving forward. And yeah, it was a good finish. And for Ramaska, this was, I believe, the first time he's been submitted, but he's looked a little vulnerable to me on the ground in the past. It just hasn't hit the surface like it has here. But here he suffers his first submission loss. And yeah, rough look for him, but I think he probably will get another fight. Although I don't know the contract situation with, these quarter finalists of the Ultimate Fighter tournament. But regardless, that about wraps it up for me. I'm trapped in the green ship, but still able to watch fights, and I'm going to be watching a few more fights before breaking down UFC 306 Noche. There's something else, Riyadh or something. I don't know. Whatever. That one. Like, share, subscribe, check out my other videos, the horse shit, and whatever the fuck.